anytime you have a CISO, you have to have an aspect of technical skills. If you're not a technical CISO, I feel like you are going to fail in your role because you are in a technical field by nature. And you have to understand your products, your services, technology that's out there, and how that solves business problems. The browser world is such a big industry now, a really, really big attack vector because everything is now like the most breaches that we see that happen in the wild really start off with phishing, right? And then bad actors get in. Everything's in that browser. The aspect of scaling really large organizations, even small, medium-sized organizations, they really have challenges kind of patching and standardizing on technology. So I think that aspect for browsers are really going to take off. I think that's a huge area that people aren't tackling. Move away from being the no person, come to conversations. For example, if a CISO or the board is inviting you to a conversation or a challenge, do your research, understand the problems, and don't come to the meetings and say, yes, that's a problem, but come to those conversations with a solution, right? And then give multiple solutions, A, B, and C.
Hi, Royce. Welcome to the Fearless Podcast. Such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Hello. Yes, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit more about you to our listeners. Just to give some context, Royce Markose is a CISO at Vistrada who brings his perspective on cybersecurity from the consulting world. And he has experience in financial services, healthcare, government, and tech. And you practically see security challenges from every angle. I'm super excited to hear your story and the way this story helps us to see the problems and solutions in cybersecurity today. So I think just to kick things off, I'd love to hear your story and what brought you to cyber in the first place.
Awesome. I love origin stories and love sharing mine. I started off like when I was a kid. My dad used to work for Texas Instruments. He'd come home with these cool gadgets and technical toys. My first computer was actually a TI computer, and I was always curious about it. And I started doing basic programming and kind of learning the basics of how computers operate, how they work. And then I was curious about the inner workings, so I broke it apart, took pieces out and figure out how, what the hard drive looks like and what memory looks like, and kind of building a computer from scratch. And that was kind of my initial journey. And then from there, you got, the 386 DXs and the 486 processors, and then kind of breaking those apart, figuring out how those things have changed from the years, and then going to running my own bulletin board. And a hacker got me and actually wiped my computer. And I was like, wow, how did this happen? And then that kind of started my curiosity in the world of security. It was like, I need to stop this guy or stop others from doing that to my bulletin board. And then that was just a kind of can that opened up my journey into cyber. So then focused my career in technology because I was really passionate about that. And then ended up getting a job with a big bank. This is back in the day. And they told me my job would be auditing AS400 systems before security was a buzzword. And AS400 systems are mainframe systems that are still used till this day. They're like tanks, battle tested. And I was doing auditing for those systems and really understood, wow, this is the future. I mean, this is what it's about. This is where technology is headed. So I see these little milestones in my journey. And then I wanted to kind of further my studies in cyber, did the CISSP, went back for my MBA where I concentrated in business, and then also tackling cybersecurity career path to that. So then that kind of brought that whole knowledge full circle, where you're going back to school, you understand the kind of future and strategies from a book perspective of where security is headed, but then matching that with my technical acumen as far as being like an engineer and kind of growing into that world really helped marry the passion and the future. So that kind of helped me establish kind of the path from a career perspective of where I was headed. And then from there, with getting into more in leadership and identifying and solving problems from the strategic perspective really got me to figure out, well, yeah, I mean, I love what I do. I'm super hands-on, But now I'm at a decision point. Do I continue this path of being very technical, or if I really want to get to the next stage of, senior leadership and CISO realm, you have to build teams. They will be your technical wing. And then, so for me, that was the hardest part of the journey, was that path where, I had talked to a lot of CISOs that were mentors as well. And they're like, Royce, you can absolutely still be technical and you should be technical, but ultimately, if you are going to make this hop into the CISO realm, you're going to have to build and hire folks that are smarter than you that will help you get to where you need to be and help secure organizations and businesses.
Wow.
That was a lot, but that's kind of the journey.
It's been a lot, but also with each point that you were bringing up, I was just thinking, oh my God, I would love to ask a follow-up question to each and every point. But maybe on the last thing that you brought up is that when you had these conversations with other CISOs, what exactly they do. And I had a previous conversation with another CISO where he mentioned that a lot of people aspire to become a CISO one day, but they don't exactly understand what's behind it. They thought like, oh, you continue being technical and being in depth, while a lot of it is actually managing other people. Did you see that expectation also sort of being broken down as soon as you stepped up in this role?
Was that, yeah, to an extent, you kind of expect it, but you really don't know what that world is like until you become a manager for the first time. And then you're balancing your people skills with technical skills, and that's a whole other dynamic, right? So I'm always been about the people, and ever since when I was in the role, you do have challenges where you want to boil the ocean and solve all the problems, but then you're, I would say, handicapped in a sense because you're strapped to a specific budget for that group, right? And you can only do so much with what you have. And I think that became a skill and an art where you do your risk assessments, you look at all your problems, and you try to balance those out for the course of the year. But as you know, nothing stays stagnant in security, and things just change at an instant. As we know, hackers, they love to find the least resistance, right? When you're in the bank and you have pretty much unlimited resources as far as technology is concerned, the bad actors start knowing that, and they know that, hey, these companies have armies of people that are protecting that outer surface. So they look at more intriguing and outside of the box ways of getting into organizations. The challenge with small to medium sized organizations, they don't have that luxury. And also that resource, tying it back, is the resources aren't always there. You don't have the armies of people. So what that means is, from once you get into the management perspective, you don't often have the ability to hire the best of the best talent, and you have to work with the resources you have in-house. And sometimes those folks are coming in from other organizations that they may not have been a security practitioner. So what you're going to have to do is see where they're excel at from their current skills and see where the gaps are, and then put them into training or kind of sessions with other subject matter experts in those fields so they can brush up their skills. And ultimately, I think that's really helped. And for me, telling people, hey, you're excellent here at your project management skills, but we use this tool right now when we need you to jump in there and kind of brush up your skills there. Here's some extra lessons or courses you can take to brush up those skills. Those conversations have really went well.
Yeah, it really sounds like when you step into this role, the management skills, the communication skills become almost vital to succeed and being successful at that position. Sort of the connecting question to it is, do you think in today's world, with so many attacks that you just mentioned coming up every time, with attackers finding new ways to break into systems, CISO constantly has to stay on top of these things. Do you think, is it okay in today's world to be less technical CISO? Or if you had to pick one, being a technical CISO with fewer management skills or more management skills, but less technical focus. It's a tough one. Yeah. But if you could pick one, what do you think in today's world is more applicable?
Okay, so I take the balanced approach where I think anytime you have a CISO, you have to have an aspect of technical skills. If you're not a technical CISO, I feel like you are going to fail in your role because you are in a technical field by nature. And you have to understand your products, your services, technology that's out there, and how that solves business problems. And I would say the business angle is maybe even more important, because you can be the most technical CISO in the world, but if you can't relay those into technical speak and risk conversations with the board level, because those board folks, yes, they are getting more technical over the years, but at the end of the day, they're looking at bottom line, and they're looking at the business from a strategy level. So understanding the risk that they see or they view security, and then marrying that with the technical aspect and being able to translate that from technical to business speak, I think would set you above and beyond other CISOs. And that's where the biggest failure is. Either you're a technical CISO or you're a business strategy person that has a sprinkle of technical, but you're not the best of both. You're going to fail in one or the other. So to answer your question, I wouldn't be a CISO if I wasn't a balance of both. I'd probably just do barbecue and open up a restaurant and take a different field. So you have to have both of those skills to really succeed in the realm of security.
Yeah, I really do think that usually whenever you speak to a CISO, there is always they either slightly fall on one end of the spectrum or the other. So it's very interesting. I imagine that in your past experience, you had to communicate a lot with vendors, right? And I'm just thinking from vendor perspective that also should be aligned the way they communicate to CISOs, right? Depending on how they try to explain what they do. So what is one thing you think that vendors get wrong when they pitch?
Yeah, so that's a whole other conversation. So vendors in general, it's one of those symbiotic relationships. You need vendors to solve problems, but then also sometimes those vendors think that they are the best of the best and everything else sucks. And the challenge is hey, if you're going to come at me from like a cold outreach from LinkedIn, I think it's fair that you do reach out, but not kind of downplaying any other vendors, right? And saying, hey, everything else anyone else you're talking to, they're not gonna help meet your expectations. We are the front center leader. We are the only, and then they throw a calendar invite. That's my pet peeve. Is like, hey, we didn't even build a relationship. We haven't even talked, and now I see this calendar.
That's invasion of my privacy.
That's invasion of my privacy. I'm like, that's not going to work, right? So I always tell the vendors, and I have a lot of awesome vendors here in the DFW area. We're all friendly here, and they come to me all the time. They're like, hey, Royce, how can we, in your perspective, in your seat, where are we going wrong? And I've had sit down lunch conversations with vendors that really want to understand the best ways of kind of marrying that relationship with a CISO. And I always tell them, get out to events, shake hands, meet in person, build that relationship and everything. And then from there, have natural conversations. Don't be too overpowering in your conversation, because as soon as you say something that rubs the CISO the wrong way, you've already basically killed any future conversations with that CISO, right? And to your point, like you said, like invasion of privacy on the calendar world, that's like, a recipe of failure. You have to build those relationships with CISOs.
Do you think vendors in a way have to be a little bit more humble when they approach? Because of course you want to say that you're the best of the best, but at the same time, you kind of like rub it into someone's face. So you probably have to, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you have to be humble as a vendor. Use data. And, sometimes you have, I hate to throw out but you have those industry standards, but sometimes those industry standard benchmarks, they're pay to play. And the really good vendors that are just starting off or just coming out of stealth, but they have an awesome technology, they don't really get to be on those pay to play kind of leaderboards, right? And the challenge they face is they're just starting. They don't have the huge budgets to pay those fees to get on those lists, but they have, really something great to say. So to your point, yes, be humble. And if you can, like if, some of those big vendor conferences conferences, you have to pay
Mhm.
thousands and thousands of dollars to have a booth, right, to get your voice out there. But I've seen some really stealth companies that are coming out or just got their first round of funding. They don't have as much to pay for those conferences, but they do unique things. They get out, they rent maybe a suite, and they invite
Mhm.
CISOs to see a demo of their product, to see it in action, to make those conversations. And I think that those are great creative ways of
Mhm.
meeting CISOs. And then also there's local events where people are invited to that you can have those conversations, and lunch and learns sessions are great too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think CISO community today? I feel like it in a way makes it easier whenever you pick the vendor and they're in one of these leaderboards because it really helps to remove that guesswork, who's great,
Mhm,
who's not. But do you
mhm.
think generally speaking, right now CISOs are more open to looking at newer companies that are not part of this? Or is there still relative resistance that is present in the CISO community?
Yeah, no, I think all good CISOs realize the pros and cons to the leaderboards of best of breed technologies versus the ones that are coming out of
Mm.
stealth. And then a lot of those CISOs that I know now have one foot into that best of breed world, and then
Mhm.
also what's up and coming, right?
Mm.
Because some of those really great companies, what happens and what's their Achilles heel is they get gobbled up by another big company, right? So the
Mm.
great tech that they have now becomes a part of just some product services that go under this big umbrella of tools and
Mm.
technologies, and then they lose that research and development that they had once really good following for.
Mm.
So the other startups and the new companies that are coming out there, they really understand what the latest threats are to the organization, and
Mm.
they see immediate things where these leadership companies, they are kind of slow to get those processes
Mm.
because now they have all sorts of change management and red tape to go through. These
Yeah.
small nimble companies can just go in right away, take advantage of AI, and really solve immediate problems that CISOs are seeing in the wild. So I think
Mhm.
there is like some aspect of being a first mover advantage in those situations.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely see the advantage of CISOs sort of being in two boats and understanding the world from both perspectives. And there's probably no other industry as cyber that sees so many acquisitions going on and so many consolidations going on. I think it's an incredible industry from this angle. What do you exactly do, Royce? I know I want to understand a little bit better. What do you do at Vistrada, and what sort of led you? Like you already shared so many advice, but I'm sure that there were moments in your journey that led you to build all of this expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question. So I do work for a company called Vistrada, which I'm the CISO for. And Vistrada is really proud to be a minority owned and women owned business, right? So we're at MWBE out of New York. Company was founded, I think it's 18 years now. So they've been in the industry for some time. It really started off as a technical company, technical boutique company. Really see the strength of kind of marrying the big four. A lot of our leadership came out of big four. So they have that
Mm.
leadership and understand those patterns, and really built what came out of big four into a boutique firm. And as of recently, we really seen like the changes from IT transformation into now we are in cloud, we are in SaaS.
Mm.
What are the problems we can solve? And cyber has always come up as the leading space of where
Mm.
problems need solutions, and companies that really have that background where they can understand and they have those patterns built out from big four kind of consultancy perspective, and then translating that into cyber has really been the future for us. So we've, as of a couple of years ago, really shifted our core, solution to more of a cyber driven organization. So we have vCISO services that we help organizations in various different sectors, right? Financial services, healthcare, municipalities, government, oil and gas, entertainment. All these sectors, they have the same challenges in cyber,
Yeah.
but in different viewpoints and different perspectives. And where we come in kind of our value that we're doing something different from other organizations is we take a team-based approach. We have myself, other VCSOs that have been in the industry in the
Mm.
seat of a CISO for many, many years, had targets on our backs and understand the challenges from a board perspective and in the weeds with technical skills. We get all those problems. We understand, as we talked about earlier, the conversations from technical to board. So we come with a team-based approach. You get a CISO, you get a CIO, customer success, an analyst that really comes with our vCISO practice. And then from there, we meet the customers where they are. And I often love to start off with, what is your business? What problems are you having? From there, we align to a standard framework, whether that's NIST or ISO, and then do risk assessments, unpack where the gaps are, and then are using best of breed technologies, what's working, what's not, and then looking at other technologies to cover those gaps to really help organizations solve those problems and get to the next level.
What is one of the most exciting projects that you worked on? You don't have to give the name of a company, but something that you were like, oh, that's really was an amazing experience helping that company get to that stage.
Yeah. I mean, we have companies that are billion-dollar organizations, right? And they're just building or just starting their security journey. So that was one of the most fulfilling things from my perspective in the seat of a CISO / vCISO is really helping those organizations. Like, they have so many challenges, don't know where to start. By nature, I love being the builder, right? So those kind of unique situations I'm super passionate about, where we can get on a whiteboard, let's throw everything out there, visualize this. I'm a visual person, so I love to use that whiteboard and say, hey, yeah, you have great skills and these areas covered, but we're really lacking here. This is how we solve it. And I often tell the folks that I'm starting off with for vCISO services, Rome wasn't built overnight. You can't just flip a switch and you're covered. You're going to have to take a multi-year journey, but let's take a risk-based approach. Where's your crown jewels of the organization? What are those systems that are most sensitive to you? Do you have a good handle on the risk there and coverage? And then things that I start off with for any client is, where do we start first is you have to have an incident response plan. That's going to be one of those critical things you need to get unpacked first and foremost, and then security policy, right? Those two things are going to start your journey, and then from there, everything is a natural flow, and it's going to be conversations over conversations. But then we do help with those quarterly board meetings. Some clients want us there with their boards and tackling those problems, and some organizations have their internal CISOs, and we are partner there as well. So we kind of marry those conversations wherever the clients are, and then from there, it's like, well, Vistrada, you're great on your vCISO services, but we have third-party risk and we have digital transformation. We're moving to cloud. Can you help us here? And we have those services as well. We offer, those are different teams, but we kind of take that full lifecycle approach. We're always there, and we're honest. If there's something that we're not great at, we will be fully honest with our clients on, maybe it's better for you to go in this direction for that particular service. So we definitely are very honest and where our strengths are, and our clients see that and have been with us for many, many years.
Yeah, I think the transparency and honesty is so fundamental in security space. It's just the nature of security space.
Absolutely.
You have to be this way. And let's say whenever you're talking to a customer where they're doing more or less okay with fundamentals, but then they're starting to see some of the more emerging attacks happening. What are some of the newer things you see out there that you think people are not paying enough attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two things right off the bat is AI and SaaS, right? So sometimes those kind of get married together. But for example, when I talk about AI, is just the future of AI. A lot of organizations are already using those technologies, using LLMs to help scale their organizations. We've recently seen articles of CEOs putting memos out there for their organizations that we're going to be an AI first organization. But I always say, let's balance that conversation. Make sure that you have the messaging correctly, where you have security that's going to be at the forefront. Anytime you have technologies that are going to help you scale and move fast, obviously, that's going to be elements of risk. So addressing those risks head on, early on. Policies are always going to be your backbone to the organization. Start off with an AI governance policy. We can help build those for organizations. But those organizations that tackle security security with those scaling technologies, I think have greater wins because they've already addressed the concerns. Companies that go head on first AI, and then all of a sudden something bad happens, that's their name and reputation, and then maybe downstream customer, client, vendor impacts, which aren't good. So you want to have a balanced approach when you go those strategy directions. And then from a SaaS-based approach, hackers take the least resistance, right? And prior to where security, when security was starting off, endpoints were the biggest attack vectors. And then these organizations like the Defender, CrowdStrike, SentinelOnes of the world have done a really solid job building those enterprise-grade, endpoint protection solutions. But now hackers are seeing that. They know that this can be harder, more resources to get in on that angle. Let's go to SaaS. That's the next wild, wild west. Every organization, I would say, even small boutique firms have hundreds of SaaS solutions that they use on a daily basis. Do they have a security team monitoring that? Do they have a good IAM perspective? And IAM is another great example of areas that we're really helping organizations get a handle on. Who has access to what all SaaS technologies do we have? What type of sensitive information is out there? Is it open to other partners, vendors, et cetera? So those are the conversations we're seeing now. That's the biggest challenges to organizations.
Yeah, those are massive problems. Unfortunately, you always want to be ahead with the development of technology, but I think it's almost unrealistic to constantly have that perfect balance. There's always one trying to catch up for another, and it's typically security trying to catch up for the technology. But on the topic of AI and SaaS, today most of the AI platforms are accessed by web browsers. Right now, AI companies are building their own browsers, and similar to SaaS, most of the websites are websites. Do you see that a lot of customers see browsers as their new attack vector, and how they approach to solving the problems that exist there?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the browser world is such a big industry now, a really, really big attack vector, because everything is now, like, the most breaches that we see that happen in the wild really start off with phishing, right? And then bad actors get in. Everything's in that browser, right? So session cookie hijacks and such, right? So that is the vector. And also, the aspect of scaling really large organizations, even small, medium-sized organizations, they really have challenges kind of patching and standardizing on technology. So I think that aspect for browsers are really going to take off. I think that's a huge area that people aren't tackling yet.
How do you typically introduce new security capabilities without sort of overwhelming the clients? Of course, they get the fundamentals right, but then when it comes to new attacker surfaces, is it easier to communicate about the risks that are starting to appear more and more?
Yes, I think that's the case. Oftentimes we do pair. I'm a data-driven person by nature, so there's a lot of reports out there of, like the Verizon, the annual Verizon security memos or the report that happens. That's a good indicator of things that they're seeing in the wild, what's happening. So there's many more like that of really good topics of documentation and data points that you can leverage for organizations to really unpack the latest and greatest. And then oftentimes we are partnered with our clients during strategy sessions where we go through, all right, future forecasting from a budget perspective of technologies and areas of security that we are concerned about, right? So, browser security, browser standardization, browser patching, AI conversations, identity access management. A lot of these things really overlap, and kind of breaking those out into a structured risk-based. So I drive those conversations through risk. So I say, hey, client A, based on your industry and what we're seeing through various factors, we believe you're going to be riskier here in these areas. Here are some areas that we recommend of people and technologies that you should start talking to, and then having those conversations. So you get those big reports that you can pay for best of breed technologies. You have those other ones that are great solutions that are coming out of stealth or just early on ventures. So we love, and being technology person by nature, I'm heavily involved in those conversations, going to events and broader conferences to bring those conversations to the forefront for security practitioners and leaders.
And I'm sure it's super helpful to customers, because when you started talking about the reports, I was thinking, oh, it must be so overwhelming to a lot of companies having to look through all of them and understand, okay, is it applicable to me? Should I be worried about that? I'm sure it's a big question for a lot of companies. They're like, there are so many attacks, but which one is relevant to me and what should I start paying attention to? Back to your topic of prioritization.
Right.
Everyone has limited budget, but it's all about picking the right priority.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know it's going to sound a little bit tacky question, but if you could wave magic wand and have all your clients implement a specific security control, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say technologies like FIDO2, right? For just authentication, passwordless authentication across the board. I think that would really solve a lot of the problems we're seeing. Although we know hackers will then move on to something else. But as I mentioned, like phishing and these type of things, the more you can move away from standard passwords, I think the better off organizations will be.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And the other day, I just spoke to another CISO, and he shared a great practice where he would teach less technical folks to create passwords where it's like the first letters of their favorite song. So it's much harder for people to guess, and all of these little tricks. And hopefully in the future, we don't have to rely on those.
Exactly.
Go to that technology.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So.
For security leaders trying to enable digital transformation rather than block it, what's your advice on being seen as a business enabler?
Right. Yeah. So move away from being the no person, come to conversations. For example, if a CISO or the board is inviting you to a conversation or a challenge, do your research, understand the problems, and don't come to the meetings and say, yes, that's a problem, but come to those conversations with a solution, right? And then give multiple solutions, A, B, and C. That way, let those decision makers and those other peers help drive the decisions for the business, but don't be like very narrow and this is the only way, the right way. Just the same problem that when we talked about vendors saying that they're the best of the best and everything else sucks. Don't be the security person that says this is the only way and everything else sucks. Come to the table with options and then help lay that in business speak and risk speak, and then let the conversations drive naturally.
Yeah. I think I saw someone's post the other day around that topic, how a security leader went into board meeting and then they presented all the problems and made the whole board super frustrated because they just presented the problems, but they didn't present the solution.
Yes.
Business. So you really want to be, what's this movie? Yes Man with Jim Carrey.
That's right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person. You want to actually pull people into those conversations so they have a stake in the game, so they feel like they're part of that solution, and that makes everyone feel good and things move faster.
Yeah, and then maybe by magic wand, all the vendors and all their practitioners out there will be aligned once there's alignment everywhere else.
I'm still hoping for that day.
One day. Royce, we have this tradition on our podcast where typically our previous guest would ask a question to the next guest.
I love that.
Yeah. So our previous guest asked this question to you. Looking back, what would you change if you're starting from scratch?
That's a great question. Yeah. So if I could start off from scratch, I would do more building of demo kind of environments, because you have everything at your fingertips and you don't always have the budgets to go to the best certification courses and such. But now, like, if you have everything at your fingertips, and back then it was still available, but I did less of that and more of the school and the education route. But I think really what stands out, if the generation today, if they take what they have as far as YouTube, just research online, AI, and just jump in and take that, build solutions that could be actually viable for organizations that would be interested, they would love to see that and may bring you on as an intern or something and could help jumpstart your career. So that's something I would do going back in time, take more advantage of talking and building network with people and technologies and kind of building those things from scratch.
Yeah, I know in the past that junior folks could prove that they're good by breaking into systems. This is probably not like you shouldn't be doing like breaking specifically into systems, but I love that more proactive approach where you build something where you show your capabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah, and don't go, let's say, do PhD in cybersecurity, but go hands-on.
Go hands-on. Yeah, and then once you have those skills, and then then take that leap and school or balance of both, I think usually helps, because if you're in school and kind of read everything from a book perspective and really don't have any hands-on, you're not going to connect the dots and you're going to be at a disadvantage. So I think everything in a balance, and if you can balance those two, I think you're going to be really successful.
Yeah, balance in books and practice and being technical CISO and being CISO that communicates well. You have to juggle a lot of things to really make it big in this world. What question would you like to ask to our next guest?
For the next guest, I would say, what advice would you have for the next generation of cybersecurity practitioners, right? Because going back, my journey is going to be way different than what the journey of my son, who's in computer science, is now. He just had that conversation with me, like, Dad, I want to do computer science, but what I need to look at, and I was like, son, you got to jump into AI. AI is going to change the world. AI is changing the world. So I would definitely ask that question to the next guest: is what recommendation would you have for that next generation?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Similarly, how you back in the days were playing with the first computer you had, right now the kids are playing with AI. So it's just different technology, same process.
Yeah, we're getting smarter and the bad guys are getting smarter. So we just got to stay ahead of that game.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully we keep on winning.
That's right.
Well, Royce, it's been such a great conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know what you do on an everyday basis. And I think it's so important to help organizations to map their risk and then show the right approach without having to overwhelm them, because cyber can be quite an overwhelming space. So you always want to make sure, how do you bring value to conversation? And on the topic of value, we spoke a lot about how do you talk as a vendor to CISOs and what to say, what not to say, and just generally what kind of approach you're supposed to take. So there were a lot of valuable lessons in this as well. And just in general, I think overall the leadership approach that I can't exactly pinpoint what was the exact phrase that you used, but just the way throughout the conversation, the way you communicated and you spoke, I think just shows how you're supposed to act as a CISO and what are sort of soft skills you should acquire to get to that position. So a lot of great lessons, and I'm sure people are going to enjoy it.
Thanks so much. Had a great time.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.